Speaking of no rules, tell me about your drum set that kind of breaks the norm for a regular drum set. Don't see the normal pieces in place.
Are we doing it right now?
Yeah, this
is really it.
I don't know. Are you recording yet? You been good? Okay, cool.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, yeah, okay. Ask me again. Once more.
Yeah, so tell me about your kit that doesn't have a lot of the normal pieces on it that you'd normally see. You've kind of made it your own and put it together in a way that's yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the approach for building this kit, I try to think about each project that I'm involved with as an individual.
Yeah.
And as Rob, you approached me about this idea, it immediately became apparent to me that I could not just be a timekeeper and have a normal drum kit setup.
Yeah.
I was going to have some elements that I could use as either a melodic force or maybe even just what would be a good way of saying, maybe supplementing what was going on. I couldn't just have drum. I had to have other things. So you can hear like on the right-hand side, from my perspective, on the right-hand side, I've got a cowbell, and on my left-hand side, I've got a wood block. I have these high tones and timbres that are different than drums and cymbals to give me some of those voices as well. And then into the cymbal world, again, same kind of idea, knowing that I'm not just going to be rhythmic force, I'm going to be a melodic force. I didn't just use normal cymbals per se. I don't have a ride cymbal at all, because at no point in time was I going to be needing that voice.
Right.
So I have just one crash cymbal, and then I have a effect cymbal over here. It's one of Sabian's, got holes inside of it. So it's not a true trash, it's not a true China, it's not a true crash, somewhere in the middle. A number of splash cymbals to give me those quick blashes of a blast of sound that are really quick, almost like white noise, really. And then I have a chopper.
Yep. Yeah.
The chopper, this hi-hat here, and that hi-hat there. I have these three voices to kind of be like, first off, three different hi-hats. So I could, a lot of times when you're listening to maybe like R&B and hip-hop is one style of music I take a lot of influence from. You'll hear differences in the hi-hats from note to note. This is a lot of times like a built-in phaser or something in the track, right?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to recreate that.
Yeah, and especially with something like this chopper, it almost works as like it's another rhythmic instrument altogether, but it kind of breaks stuff up. You hear a lot of that in like linear style drumming and stuff like that, where it's thrown in as a little bit of an accent.
Yeah.
But it still kind of feels like a hi-hat. It's not, it sticks out, but in kind of a good way.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
It's become kind of a cool thing to have. Like a long time ago, people still do this. They'll stack their broken cymbals.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And this is
that was my first one.
Yeah, right. Like I've got one of those on my kit. It's just all the broke cymbals just end up in a pile, and that's what that thing is.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
cool that these are getting made now with a specific idea in mind.
The first reason I bought it was because I saw, and I can't remember the original company, the Clap Stack. I think Morph is the one that made it as the company. It made a Clap Stack. And I saw a bunch of hip-hop artists, drummers using it to recreate the hand claps. It is a natural way to recreate that hand clap sound. And I bought this one because it could kind of do that. What you'll notice, like the wing on the top, my wing nut on that thing, is pretty tightened down. I can loosen it up, and the blast of sound lasts longer. And then it acts like a hand clap.
Gotcha.
But then I tighten it down, and I can get that hi-hat sound. And so a lot of times, in this case, it's not. In a lot of cases, I'll have it closer to me so that I can reach that wing nut and tighten it down for song to song.
Yeah.
Depending on what I want.
You said something a minute ago that I'm going to touch on. You said that you like to cater your kit to the project. So what brought you to that idea instead of trying to do like this one-size-fits-all approach? Because there's so many ways to approach drumming, and I think that it's maybe an expression of you in some way, what you're bringing to a project.
Yeah.
So how did you, kind of, not just this kit, like how did you come to the broader idea of fitting a project as a drummer?
For me, the first drummer that I studied was Neil Peart, or P-Art, however you want to pronounce it, from Rush. He was my first one, and I just fell in love with the way he drummed. And of course, the first thing I noticed was all the kits. Of course, I'm looking at a guy who's been drumming at that point for like 20 years, 30 years. He's got 3 decades of kits.
And endorsement deals to have whatever he wants.
Exactly. And so I'm seeing all these different kits, and I'm like, they look the same, but they're a little bit different. And eventually my parents would buy me a VHS called Test for Echo. And it is a breakdown of everything that Rush did or that Neil did for Test for Echo, the album. It was a great piece of literature to get my hands on at a very young age as a drummer.
I say you said VHS. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I remember my dad remelting the tape because I watched it so much. Neil made a comment about approaching drums the way you approach rock climbing. And a rock climber will climb, and as they get themselves in a position, they look up and find the next place to go to. So you have to cater each moment to the decision you're in and what's going to happen next. And he brought that back into playing drums, as a drummer, the part I choose, whether I do a groove or a fill, what fill I do. He's like, down to what kit I'm going to use, He says it's all going to be catered to what I'm going to do. He also had another little thing he did is STS, serve the song. And I'm going to be completely honest. I have a band that I ran with for quite a while. They're the Bama Gamblers. And if you ask any of the guys that are in that group, they'll tell you when I first started, I used way too big of a kit. I always brought the massive kit. And I'll be honest with you, I felt like I got old. And I started making it smaller. And that process also broke me of, I always have to use this kit. Well, what does the gig need, and bring that.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something in that too, that you play to the song. You said it's kind of like a rock climber working through a song. That's a great analogy. I'm a drummer, spoiler alert. And so this is drum talk, and we can get nerdy on this. But as I'm moving through a song, you're kind of always thinking about, you're playing the thing you're doing, and you're thinking about what the next thing is that you're going to do. Yeah. You got to know your next move. That was a big learning for me. At what point in your drumming did that click? Because I from personal experience, was not that way when I first started. I was working on my chops. I was working on playing fast and loud and all of this other stuff. And then at some point, and I don't know when it was, it clicked. How did that happen for you?
For me, I'm trying to think of this idea of how do I maintain what I'm doing in the moment and engage with what's around me. Is kind of the question.
Listening to the band and that sort of thing. Yeah,
that was I got really good at that. My first trial or tribulation that I had that got me good at it was I had a good buddy of mine named Rodney Easter, and he and I grew up together. He was one of the biggest reasons I make music the way that I make it now. And during jazz band, he would knock my music off the stand. This was a practical joke just between brothers, but Mr. Hudson did not allow that to be a reasonable excuse for me to stop.
Sure.
And so I immediately learned that if I listen to the other instruments and I follow them with the ideas I'm being taught in my personal lessons, I don't need that piece of music. Like, for instance, listening to Sing, 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 if you know that first pattern is going to be bum, 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 bum. I don't need a piece of music to tell me that. Well, if I know it and I'm watching them and I see them do it, then I can engage and I can be present and aware. So that's like kind of where it started, was that need to survive in a classroom because I had lost
I don't have my music anymore.
Yeah, I can't see. What do I do?
Yeah.
Listen to them and remember what they're going to do. The next instance that because of that, I was able to then start interact with members of bands that I was in on stage live. So as I'm playing and doing my thing, if something was going wrong, instead of just looking at someone like, ugh, I was able to be like, your bass is off. Your bass, I could interact and communicate.
Why'd you pick the bass? You just like went in on the...
Your keyboard is off. I'm sorry, all bassists. That was my fault. That's on me. That's on me. And that got me a lot of calls back.
Yes, I was getting to that. That's my next question, is that when you are able to listen and connect with people on a musical level, they're going to feel that you are responding to what they play.
Yeah.
And I think that that's sort of like the next step of good drumming. You know all the licks, you can play to the click, you can fit in with a band as, showing up on time and doing the stuff that you have to do to be a musician. The next step, though, is getting called back. And as a drummer, that's the bag. That's the whole thing, right?
If you can get called back, you're in.
Yeah, so what do you do to ensure that you are getting the callback?
For me, callbacks, to get the call back, there's a couple of things that I really try to do. The first thing is my mindset. When they call me, I am a humble servant. I am not in control. I have no hands on any reins. I do what they ask to a T. I a lot of times will ask for very specific instructions. Like, hey, during this song, what do you want me to do? Now, if they are a little bit more laxed, a lot of times they'll be like, you just do whatever you'd like. But I have some people that come back and like, I'd like you to play on the hi-hat right here. I'd like you to, things like that. And I do that. Even if I'd completely disagree, like at the core of who I am as a musician, you didn't call me for that. They obviously called me because they want me to do what they want. And so that's the first thing, is that mindset of a humble servant. You are not in control. Second, another big thing, communication. Talking with this
100%.
person.
Absolutely.
When I get to, a lot of people that I work with call me a friend. And they call me a friend because right now I've got a text message on my phone from a buddy in a band of mine who's like, hey, we haven't seen each other in a while because the band hasn't been gigging. And he's texting me, hey, bud, just checking in. How are you? That. When you can connect, to me, honestly, the reason I'm in music and the reason I do what I do is for connection. That is what existence is completely about. The reason we're here is to connect with others, to be connected with others, and to feel connected to others. And that is connection. That feels good. When you know that person cares about you, hey, just making sure you're having a good day. I like the people that lead the bands to know that as well.
But you set your mind that is your approach before you get to the gig. You don't show up with the bad attitude and you don't show up late and with stuff on your mind. Like, you're there to do a job. You treat it professionally.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the bare minimum too, is like being able to play your instrument is the bare minimum. So I should have said that. So that's that. But to fit in the music scene and to have a career in the music scene as a drummer, there's something else that you have to bring to the table. And you're articulating that. You have to listen to everybody and provide what they're asking you to do and that sort of stuff. Did it take you a long time to learn that? Did you kind of fall on your face to learn that? Or did you know that from the beginning?
Oh, that last part. Did I know it from the beginning? Yes.
Did you do it from the
beginning?
beginning?
People told me from the beginning. No, I did not. I showed up at a lot of gigs thinking I was the top cheese. You called me to play drums. You wanted me to play drums, so I'm going to play drums the way I want to.
Yeah.
No, that is an awful way. That's a great way to never get called back.
Right.
And to get a bad reputation as well, to have that nasty attitude.
The music scene is small, and when you get that reputation, there's no real coming back from that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like you'd have to fight tooth and nail to be able to get back from that.
And then not only being so small and close-knit, they're also very gossipy, might be a good word. The community talks. We talk a lot, where I'm always chatting with buddies about what's going on in the music scene and whatnot. So there's a lot of chatter that goes on. This, deep personal talk happening out in the coal mine. That didn't really happen. These guys are out here just hunting coal, like just doing their job. But in the music scene, there's a lot of interpersonal reactions.
There's a lot of time in a van driving across it. So like you get to know people
absolutely.
Real quick.
And I also think that just the nature of what we're doing, like tearing down these walls within ourselves and being vulnerable to express this idea, puts you in a position to connect very easily with those around you, especially if they're doing it too. When you're in a band, you'll hear these ideas of like people calling each other's in bands brothers. I think that's why. It's because we're doing something very, I'll use the word raw. I'm trying to get this idea from my soul and my mind, and I'm trying to give it to you. We're trying to do this together. And that really brings you closer together and connects you. And I try to make sure that the other people I work with know that. So that they, even if they're not calling me back to ask for a gig, I consider a good callback to be, hey, I don't have anything for you, but man, just checking in. How's things going? That's as good of a callback as getting a job.
Yeah, and because that you've made the connection, and if something in the future comes up, then they're going to give you a call too. And things don't always work out with a certain person, but you still maintain those connections to try to stay professional with people.
Yeah, hopefully so. Absolutely. At any time if I've walked away from any professional relationship with bad blood, I've always considered it my fault. It is, even if I didn't do anything wrong, it's still my fault. I should have found a way to navigate it better. because that's just no way you want to leave it. You don't want to walk away from anything that way. Which at this moment, as I'm thinking, I don't think I've got any.
I mean, that's good to say. It's probably not true, but it's.
I was about to say, I know I'm forgetting, and I'm so sorry, whoever I'm forgetting. 1,000 apologies.
No, they fired you. Don't worry about that. We're not worried about that.
We don't even care about him whatsoever. Yeah, absolutely.
So when you were preparing to come do this sort of thing, let's kind of talk about the process and go behind the curtain just a little bit. That this was a different sort of Spicer's Live episode in the fact that you were doing a drum solo and you're doing it over a loop that you created in real time. We'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to mention too that you use loops, samples, and that sort of stuff in your regular drumming with bands that you'll set up and do it yourself. So kind of give me the overview of why you do that.
Yeah, for me, again, I guess, funny, it'll turn back to the Serve the Song that we talked about a little while ago. There was a couple of groups that I was a part of where there were some sounds that were in the drum world that I really wanted. They were scratching a certain itch, and I just couldn't get it done. One of the main ideas that I remembered first coming up that I wanted to cover and I couldn't figure out how to do it was the auxiliary percussion player that would accompany the Allman Brothers a lot. You hear them really keeping time along with a second drummer, but you really hear these people keeping time and helping out. You can hear the conga patterns and things like Jessica and whatnot, and I really wanted that. The band that I was a part of at the time was not super keen on getting another member. As another cut to the check,
right?
But was also not super keen on like doing backing tracks because of the click and all that kind of stuff. And so what I had to do is I had to find a way to build that track and make it controllable to where I could, while we were playing about a phrase before we were there, start putting in the tempo with my left foot, and then once we get there, press another button with my left foot that would start that loop in time. And then I would just stay with the loop. Everybody else would know to stay with me. And then once we were out of that section, I'd kill it and we were out.
Yeah. So that's a really great process to go through that and kind of allow you to bring more to the song that you physically can't do. Like there's only, you got the four limbs and there's a point where like you can't polyrhythm your way into a conga line, right?
Yeah,
like there's
absolutely.
no way to do that. So how do you bring that to the table? And you decided, hey, we're going to sample in, I'm going to set the tempo to this loop and we're going to make that happen.
Yep.
So that kind of leads us into here. And I feel like that conversation is kind of what led to this idea to do this kind of solo over a loop that you've created, because it provides you with this backing track experience. It's more for the listener. It's not just a drum solo, which I would love, but I don't know if everybody's into drum solos. So walk me through what you do. We don't have to get back there or anything. Just kind of give me the overview of it, and how did you get the idea of the individual parts that you were going to add to build that loop?
The product we were using is the Launchkey.
Yes.
They have a launch pad, they have a launch key. The launch key has multiple different series. We were using the one that's just 2 octaves. It's got 2 octaves of finger pads, a couple of control knobs, tons of different features that are built into it. And we'll talk a little bit about some of them as we're going through.
All of it's MIDI.
All of it's done with MIDI.
MIDI.
All of it's done with MIDI. It comes out of the back as a USB-C and then plugs into your computer via USB-A, even though I'm kind of thinking you could use it with maybe an iPad or something using the USB-C to USB-C cord. But it runs in this way into the computer. And then from there, we started, just in there goofing around at first, like looking for different sounds. The cool thing about GarageBand is you can open up the whole library, start just clicking through sets, moving your way through different sounds, getting to an actual sound.
I was surprised how easy this was, because I've never really messed with loops like this. And within 15 minutes of us turning the computer on and kind of talking through what we wanted to do, here's a tempo, you did the little clave thing with the castanets. Just a couple of minutes later, we were like, well, that's song number 1. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the ease of use, the functionality of just being able to have the Launchkey product going straight into GarageBand. You have every sound that you could ever want. There's even drums on there, and you put a drum beat to one of the things we were doing as well that, I was like, you actually have to play the drums. You can't just do the solo on the keyboard, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. But so it was incredibly easy to pull that off. I feel like I'm gonna want to incorporate this in some of my music moving forward. Just the ease of building a loop.
Oh yeah,
it was easier than I thought. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I've used loop pedals with guitar before. It's easy, but it doesn't have near the flexibility of adding every instrument ever. And even stuff that isn't instruments that you can do with MIDI.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. For me, the way that the two things I was thinking of as you were just saying that was, first off, the way that I got the Novation Launchkey set up is I literally just plugged it in.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, I plugged it in and it boom. GarageBand knew what was going on. It was very intuitive of how to move throughout its different functions.
I want to make sure. Hang on, I want to say this. Make sure it works with every DAW and interface. It's not just a GarageBand product. It works with whatever interface you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For me, and I'll be honest, I had just started using GarageBand, and so I was already kind of having a little bit of trouble maneuvering throughout. I was already a little clumsy as I moved through the DAW, and plugging this in, I just jumped right in where I was. Didn't add any extra complications to what I was already having a little bit of trouble with.
And you were even able to manipulate it while you were playing. Mm-hmm. Like you're keeping a beat, or you're playing on the snare and kick and hi-hat one hand, and then you're like, do this and do that, that sort of thing. So like, I think for a drummer to be able to utilize those kinds of tools is kind of the next level progression. Like, what's keeping you from writing a bass line? You know what I'm saying? And like playing that in real time with your band.
I wish I could. There's a performer out there that does that. He's got a organ in his left hand and he's playing a drum, or maybe it's the other way. I can't remember exactly, but he's doing the whole 9 yards.
That's killer.
That actually was making me think, and I've actually used this same idea in which I have GarageBand open, but I'm not recording anything. And then I have an interface plugged in, and I have 2/4 inches running out. And I will run that. Where I run it was to a church, a front of house church. And this church had hired me to play drum set, and there were some other percussion parts that you may see. You play with a church, sometimes you'll get tubular bells or tubular chimes, stuff that's just almost impossible to bring,
to physically have those instruments.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't have a 5-octave marimba and a glockenspiel and
a whole set of chimes.
Yeah,
they weigh 200 pounds, and you need a semi-trailer to get them there.
It's not going to work, right?
Or timpani.
Yeah, exactly. That was another big one for me. I was like, that's not going to. But what you can do is buy packs for sounds, which I did is I bought an orchestral percussion pack. So it had a full range of timpani sounds, a full range of tubular chimes. I put those into GarageBand. So you could use them to record if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, sure.
But what I do is I'm not recording. I'm just running it straight out. It's just going out. So I play the part on the launch key, and it plays that to them. Mm-hmm. But I have it, I'll run it down real quick and set it to tubular chimes, and then I can play the tubular chime part while I'm playing the drum part.
Yeah.
Gong, 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 gong.
So this goes, I don't mean to interrupt, but this goes back to the core idea of play to the song. What was the acronym?
STS.
Serve the song. Yeah. That goes back to that core idea as a drummer. If you can serve the song by learning how to use these products, then you make yourself a lot more marketable, and you're going to get those callbacks and that sort of thing like we were talking earlier, because you're bringing something to the table that is unique but can fill so much sonic space that you don't have to hire other band members or have all of that equipment or whatever. It's so simple to be able to incorporate that into your music.
Absolutely. I also feel like a lot of times watching a lot of drummers seem to get bored. They're trying to just groove, and then they start chopping
and then
all
they
over
start
the place.
overplaying.
And I'm thinking, I thought to myself, maybe, what if I was keeping myself busy by doing something else? What if the organ part's being done by Hunter? So I've got this going on, but this limb is now having to keep up with F major, what's the rhythm, over to C minor, and I'm having to keep up with all this stuff. Maybe that could keep me from chopping up too much, and 100% it did. I mean, it also really helps me with connecting with my other bandmates, because now I can actually think about what's going on and how it fits to what I'm doing.
Sure.
I started noticing little nuances that if I hadn't have been trying to pitch and rhythm at the same time, I never would have noticed. But seeing how rhythm and pitch play with each other, it was really easy to see because I'm doing both.
This has been a lot of fun. Spicer's Live Acoustic Room Sessions. Hunter Jackson, the artist in residence this evening, played an amazing drum solo and also showed us how he incorporates using the Launchkey products, loops, all of that sort of really cool MIDI stuff that you were just talking about. Amazing stuff. Thanks so much for coming and doing this.
Thanks for having me, brother. Anytime.